wasn't bored with the news yesterday, Stu. I'm not sure anybody was.
We said it. We did say these are like kind of, just normal. Any Republican nominee may have put these people in office. And that changed, I would say, yesterday.
That would, yep.
This is what you're promised, right? You get it's always exciting.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of exciting yesterday.
There's a couple of things that I find worthy of pointing out if you look at it from his point of view. Last time he was in office, he didn't know who to trust, right? He didn't know the system. He didn't know the players. He didn't know the parties, how they actually work in Washington. And he was stabbed in the back, in the side, in the shoulder, in the chest, in the stomach, everywhere. He was stabbed by everybody, okay? So he's looking first, I think, for people who are loyal to his vision. And perhaps also loyal to him because he was stabbed over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, this is a factor.
Right. And it's logical and reasonable. I mean, Stu, I've been stabbed from every direction, right?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah. So, wait a minute. And you know that I have a tight circle around me, and they are people that not everybody necessarily likes each other, but they're all people I know because I've seen them battle-hardened. They will never stab me in the back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
and that's reasonable.
A very reasonable desire.
Correct. So that's the first thing that needs to be taken into consideration. The second thing I noticed yesterday is he's also nominating people that the left will say, this is vengeance. No, not necessarily, although it could quickly become that, and I will be against that if it is a grudge fest, okay? But I don't think that's what it is. I think this is people who have been wronged by the department they're now running. You know what I mean?
Right.
For instance, Tulsi Gabbard, DNI. Well, what did DNI? She oversees CIA, Homeland Security, all intelligence, okay? Well, she was put on the terror watch list. Now, you could look at that and say, oh, she's going for vengeance. She wants retribution. No, I know Tulsi well enough to know she wants no one to ever face that again for political reasons. You know what I mean? She was deeply, not offended, deeply disappointed in her country. It was an assault on her honor. That's where Tulsi is. And she's like, my country, I mean, it's shattered for her. My country is saying that I'm a traitor, and they're only saying it because of politics. This is not America. So I think she's perfect for that role. Now, Matt Gaetz, is an interesting pick. I don't know how I feel about Matt Gaetz as the Attorney General. Wouldn't have been my pick, but I'm going to give Donald Trump I'm going to give him all the rope he's asking for. I think he has earned our trust. He has earned the right to go fishing and pull up any fish that he wants. Now, that is not a blanket, wait a minute, this isn't working out well kind of deal. If it's not working out well, I'm still going to say it's not working out well. However, if you look at what he's done in the past, he was one of the toughest people against the Justice Department. I mean, it's him, Massey, Rand Paul. He went after the Justice Department, and he was in oversight of the Justice Department. So he knows it. He is qualified for it. He just is possibly a loose cannon. But the other thing I know about him is he will not stab Donald Trump in the back.
Definitely not. He will do anything that Donald Trump asks him to do. And I
hope that's not. Wait a minute. I hope that's not a blanket statement from anybody. And I'm not talking about you, but from anybody. I will do what the president asked me to do, unless it's unconstitutional.
Look, I don't have that much worry that Donald Trump is going to request an unconstitutional thing, though I don't think Matt Gaetz would be the obstacle in his path if he did.
Right.
I'm not all that concerned about Donald Trump doing that. But I think Matt Gaetz will do it. I mean, I can understand if I'm Donald Trump. Like, I've been through this. They've come after me. I need somebody to go in there and basically fire everybody and not feel bad for because they have relationships inside that world.
Right.
And so from that perspective, I understand the Gaetz pick, because Gaetz will do that. He will, if Donald Trump says go in there and fire 75% of the people, he will fire exactly 75.0% of the people.
Yeah. And I will tell you that, there are different phases of a job. And,
right.
And, there are war generals and there are peacetime generals. A war general isn't afraid of getting bloody, isn't afraid of just going in just with a hatchet and just kill them all. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I think that that's a Gaetz role, that he may or may not be. I mean, proof is in the pudding. A peacetime guy, he's the guy who goes in when you're at war and says, all of you out. He does that for 2 years. Oh, and who's open for a gig in Ron DeSantis is open in 2 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it kind of seems like he's specifically designed for the beginning of this.
Yes.
Now, again, the question of whether he gets confirmed is a whole other situation. And I know that the recess appointment situation, they're trying to get it so they don't have to confirm him. I think that's probably the only way he gets the job. I don't think he'll get through the Senate. But it's not impossible. And if he goes through the recess appointment approach, he can get in there and he can go for 2 years because of that clause. So he would be able to only do 2 years, and then he would need to be confirmed. And maybe in 2 years, if he just did a really good job, he would get confirmed by the Senate. So it's possible. But I think right now he just got, the guy's got a lot of enemies in Congress. A lot of times that's a good sign. So, but I do think you're right in that he's the type of person that's just going to go in there and light the place on fire. And that's exactly what Donald Trump, I think, wants to start out because of how corrupt he believes it is.
Yeah.
And so I understand it from that perspective. Look, if I'm making the pick, which I'm not, I was not actually elected president of the United States,
really?
So I don't get to make this pick. But you think of a person like Eric Schmidt.
I would have gone with him.
Who is, I think, a more... I don't know. I think he would do a lot. He would not be, I think, a rubber stamp like I think Gaetz will be for anything that he wants. Mm-hmm. However, he is a really serious person, can absolutely do the job, would be an incredible pick for that job, and I think brings a little more credibility, not to mention a much easier path in the Senate. And but again, it's up to Trump. He gets to make these picks, and if this one fails, he moves on to somebody else.
And I like Ken Paxton. Paxton wouldn't have affected the balance of power in the Senate and the House. You know what I mean?
The House is we're getting into worry time here, guys. We've now taken 3 House members out when you have a very small majority. Now I'm sure Trump is thinking about this because it is important to him. He does need the House.
Critical.
And I think they're going to get to 220 or 221. But
he's got to stop poaching from the House. He has to.
Johnson's begging him at this point. Please, nobody else.
No more.
But again, they'll have because he dropped out quickly. Now, there's of course a lot around that. Gaetz they were scheduled to vote on whether they were going to release a report on all of his personal issues here in 2 days. And so the fact that he immediately drops out, that means they theoretically don't.
Where do you stand on those issues? Do you believe those to be true, or is that another hatchet job?
It's an interesting question. I think to me, again, I will say I haven't spent a lot of time diving into this. To me, the idea that he was sex trafficking seems like a real stretch. I don't know. I could be
there are sex traffickers in the country, and they seem to miss a lot of those. They don't even look for a lot of those.
Yeah, he was not charged, it should be pointed out. And the idea that it seems like even the accusation itself
is sketchy.
It strikes me as like they're stretching that into a larger crime. Like they're saying basically, I mean, the accusation, we don't need to go through all this because none of it's been proven. We don't even have the report. But the accusation, if you don't know, is that he slept with a 17-year-old girl and took her across on trips, which they call as across state lines.
Yeah.
And Venmo, they say they had his Venmo records, and they say that he Venmoed these women a bunch of money, which I think that part of it is true. The question is, what was it for? The accusation is it was for paid sex. So paid sex across state lines, that's sex trafficking. Now, look, when I think of sex trafficking, I'm thinking of like people being smuggled in from other countries and kept hostage.
I immediately think of a cargo container.
Exactly, and that is not the accusation against him. Look, they're serious. Look, if he actually is having sex with underage girls, like that's a big enough deal. And obviously Trump is convinced he didn't. He has denied this. There are a lot of accusations from multiple other members of Congress who say that he was, at the very least, showing them pictures of girls that he was having sex with on the floor of the House. And again, that is not necessarily a crime, but not necessarily the best activity for someone you want to appoint to Attorney General.
It's more Clinton-esque.
Sure.
Worthy of the president of the United States.
But as we know, it's difficult to find somebody who isn't engaged in some horrible activity in Washington. So I don't know.
I hope these things are wrong. We can't have somebody who has any dirt on them.
Oh, and look, Gaetz is tons. They're about to release an ethics report on him that they are saying is very damaging. Now, Gaetz is going to deny it, and he has some. I remember him saying, "Oh, actually, they're coming. I'm being framed." Or might be.
Yeah, he's denied this hard.
Some of that was true. I mean, because they were coming after his dad and some related things. So there's a long story here. If that report comes out, which, by the way, I would expect it to. It will be very surprising if somebody who he has a lot of enemies does not leak this report before this.
But you have to remember too, the report is still just raw.
It's an ethics investigation. It's not going to result in charges.
Right.
At the end of the day, right? Like, this is going to come down to whether Republicans want to cross this line for Trump. And this is the biggest one he's presented to them so far. If he went to Thune, and this is what I expected, he went to Thune and said, look, I'm not going to endorse Rick Scott if you give me these recess appointments. That's my guess is that was a big part of the deal. He was pretty clear about it, and the reporting was pretty clear on it going out. If that happens, he will be able to get in there. He'll go in, he'll shake the place up, and probably only last 2 years.
Yeah, because he will be acting Attorney General.
Acting, and that's the maximum limit on that. So, but I will say, it will be an interesting test of that relationship and how serious Thune is in keeping that promise.
Oh yeah,
because Thune is not a guy that I would trust with a promise like that.
I wouldn't trust Thune with anything.
I mean, he's.
Hey, could you hold this pile of dirt for me? I'm not giving it to Thune.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely, I'm all over it.
Thune. I mean, the easiest way to think of Thune is McConnell. I mean, he's a protege of McConnell's. He's basically McConnell. Now, look, McConnell, maybe he would keep that promise. But usually what happens here is the Senate wants their opportunity to give their opinion and their consent.
The one thing I do like about Gaetz is, he was pushing to stop the influence industry in Washington, and he was pushing for the end of stock trading, inside information, blah, blah, blah.
He's very good on that.
And he reached out to the uber left. I mean, he stood with AOC. And I love this comment from him. AOC is wrong a lot, but she's not corrupt, and I'll work with anyone and everyone to ensure that Congress is not compromised. I think that's good.